She didn't expect to give up her last muffin. He didn't expect kindness from anyone. But what happened after that small gesture would change all their lives forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Rain beat against the windows of Miller's Corner Cafe, the kind of icy, miserable downpour that made everything feel worse than it already was. Emily Carson wiped her hands on her apron and sighed. It was 5:47 a.m., her third double shift in a row, and her feet were killing her. The manager hadn't even shown up, and she'd already been asked to cover for another server who caught something. Emily was 26, thin from stress, with dark circles under her eyes and calluses on her palms. Her blonde hair was tied up in a bun that had given up hours ago. She wasn't used to feeling glamorous, not when she barely made enough tips to afford rent for the tiny basement room she called home. As she slid a tray of half-warm croissants into the case, the bell above the door jingled softly. A man stumbled in, soaked to the bone, cradling a little girl in a tattered pink coat. His clothes were threadbare, eyes red-rimmed from cold or crying. The girl looked about 5, shivering against his chest, her tiny hands wrapped in his oversized scarf. Emily looked around. There were 2 muffins left in the warmer. Just 2. The man walked up, hesitating. "Hi," he rasped. "Do you have anything cheap?" We haven't eaten since yesterday." Emily glanced at the register. She wasn't even sure she had enough to comp anything without getting chewed out again. But the girl's lips were blue. Without a word, Emily grabbed the last muffin, heated it, sliced it in half, and added a little butter. Then she poured a small hot cocoa and set it down on a clean tray. "No charge," she said softly. "Just let her warm up, okay?" The man looked stunned. "You sure?" Emily gave a tired smile. "Yeah, the owner's a jerk anyway." Tears welled in his eyes as he sat the girl down and whispered, "Say thank you." The little girl smiled through cracked lips. "Thank you, miss." Emily's throat tightened. "You're welcome, sweetheart." She walked away quickly, blinking hard. She didn't know their names. She didn't ask, but she felt better, even if she'd have to skip lunch again. Later that day, when Emily checked the muffin case, she noticed something strange under the plate. A folded note. She opened it. "Your kindness won't be forgotten. EJ." She frowned. EJ. She didn't know anyone by those initials. She didn't realize that EJ wasn't just a name. It was a logo. The logo of Ethan Jameson, CEO of Jameson Dynamics, the tech giant headquartered right next door. And she had just fed him and his daughter. The rain had stopped by the time Emily's shift ended, but the cold lingered like a warning. She tucked the mysterious note deeper into her coat pocket, trying not to overthink it. Maybe the guy had just made up initials. People did weird stuff when they felt embarrassed. Still, something about the handwriting, the expensive paper, the weight of those words, it nagged at her. Your kindness won't be forgotten. She'd heard empty promises her whole life. Why did this one feel different? By 3 p.m., her shift was over, and her stomach was already growling. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's half-burnt toast. She walked the long 3 blocks home, her shoes soaked through, her coat too thin. The basement she lived in smelled of mildew and broken dreams, but at least the heating worked, most days. She changed out of her uniform, opened her laptop to check for any new freelance gigs. Nothing. Bills piled up on the desk next to her. Past due. Final notices. The gas company had called yesterday with their courtesy warning. One more late payment, and they'd shut it off. She dropped her head onto her arms and cried. Meanwhile, just one building over, in the sleek glass tower of Jameson Dynamics, a different storm was brewing. Ethan Jameson sat alone in his office, still wearing the same hoodie and jeans from that morning. His hair was still damp from the rain, and his daughter, Ellie, was napping in the corner under a warm blanket a secretary had rushed to provide. He'd disappeared from the public eye for a week. No press, no board meetings. His father had died unexpectedly, leaving Ethan sole owner and CEO, and with it, billions in responsibility. But none of that mattered the night he found out his late wife's estate was being dragged into court by her estranged family. They were suing for custody of his daughter, all because she was a Jameson, and they claimed he was unfit. A headline was already circulating. Grieving CEO seen wandering city with child in tow. Sources question his stability. That morning, he'd fled the cameras, the bodyguards, the lawyers. He just wanted to feel human. And then that waitress, the woman who didn't blink, didn't ask for anything in return. She gave up her last muffin for his child and made no show of it. That kind of humanity, unbought, rare. He had her name from the cafe's badge. Emily Carson. He typed it into his laptop. Then he paused. He'd promised Ellie he wouldn't do what his father used to dig into people, own them, manipulate them. Still, he clicked enter. Emily didn't know her name, was already running through background systems inside a tech conglomerate. She only knew her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. Hello, Miss Carson, a deep, polished voice asked. She hesitated. Yes. This is Alex Klein, executive assistant to Mr. Ethan Jameson. Her mouth went dry. I think you have the wrong number. We don't. Mr. Jameson asked me to arrange a delivery. A thank you for this morning. What? No, that wasn't. I didn't do it for her. He insists. Please check your front door. There was a knock. Emily opened it slowly. No one was there. Just a white box. Heavy. With a ribbon. She carried it inside and opened it. Inside was a brand new silver MacBook Pro, top of the line. And under it, a sealed envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Dear Emily, you didn't know who I was. That's why your kindness meant something. You reminded me that good people still exist. This isn't a handout. It's an opportunity. If you're interested, come by 44th and Pearl tomorrow at noon. The receptionist will be expecting you. Ethan Jameson. She read it again. And again. 44th and Pearl. That was the Jameson Dynamics Tower. The company next door. At 12:01 the next day, Emily stepped into the high-rise lobby, feeling completely out of place in her second-hand coat and thrift store boots. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. Miss Carson. Emily nodded nervously. Mr. Jameson is expecting you. 57th floor. 57. Yes, ma'am. The elevator doors opened before she could object. As she rose, her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored elevator walls. Exhausted, pale, uncertain. What am I even doing here? The doors opened, and Ethan Jameson stood waiting. Clean-shaven, fresh clothes. His daughter standing beside him, holding a small bouquet of flowers. Ellie beamed. You're the Muffin lady. Emily laughed in shock, instinctively kneeling. Hi again, sweetie. Ethan extended a hand. Miss Carson, thank you for what you did. She looked up at him. He didn't wear the cold CEO expression she'd expected. He looked human, like he remembered what it meant to be broken. And saved. I didn't do anything special, Emily whispered. You did, he said simply. That's why I want to offer you something. Her breath caught. What? Emily blinked. You want to offer me something? Ethan nodded, calm but deliberate. A position. An opportunity, really. One that matches the kind of person you are, not just what your resume says. Emily almost laughed. Not out of disrespect, but disbelief. You don't even know who I am. I know enough, he said quietly. You gave away the only food you had left to a stranger and his daughter. Not because it made you look good, because it was the right thing to do. That's rare. She bit the inside of her cheek, heart thudding. But I'm not. I don't know anything about tech or corporate stuff. He nodded. Good. That means you won't pretend to. But you understand people. You understand service, patience, humility. I need someone like that. She crossed her arms, unsure if this was a test, a joke, or something worse. For what exactly? Ethan glanced at Ellie, then back at her. We're launching a new community initiative designed to make tech more accessible to the working class. I want it to be led by someone who knows what struggling actually feels like. Who's lived it? I want someone grounded. Someone real. Emily's throat felt tight. She didn't have a college degree. She'd barely scraped by with a GED between waitressing and taking care of her sick mom. This sounded like a dream someone else was supposed to have. I don't think I'm qualified. That's the thing, Ethan replied. Most of the best people I've ever met never thought they were qualified. But they did the work anyway. He motioned toward a small folder on the nearby desk. That's the contract. Read it. Think about it. If you walk out of here and never call again, that's fine too. No pressure. No strings. Emily slowly picked up the folder. The salary made her knees weak. It was more than she'd make in 4 years of double shifts. Why are you doing this? She whispered. What's in it for you? Ethan smiled faintly. A reminder that not everything has to be transactional. Besides, if my daughter's going to grow up in this world, I want her to see more people like you in leadership, not fewer. Emily stood there frozen, folder in her hands, mind racing. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet somehow seen, maybe for the first time in a very long time. That night, she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her basement apartment, the folder clutched to her chest, wondering what her mother would have said if she'd lived to see this day. Probably something like, "About damn time." Her mom had always believed in kindness, always told Emily, the smallest gestures leave the biggest marks. But could she actually walk into that company? Could she walk away from the only life she'd known? Her stomach twisted. You're not meant for this. They'll laugh at you. You're just a waitress with nothing to offer. But then, just as loud, came the memory of Ellie's tiny voice. "Thank you, miss." And Ethan's eyes when he said, "You reminded me that good people still exist." Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about being perfect. Maybe it was about being exactly who you were, on your worst day, and still choosing to do good. By Monday, Emily had accepted the position. Her first day wasn't glamorous. She didn't have a big corner office or assistant. Instead, she was shown to a modest space on the 8th floor where Ethan had set up the new Bridge Project, a program aimed at connecting underprivileged youth to real tech education and resources. "You'll be the outreach coordinator," Ethan explained. "You'll talk to schools, nonprofits, local shelters, help build a real bridge between our world and theirs." Emily dove in headfirst. She didn't have fancy corporate jargon, but she had heart and grit, and the employees noticed. Within weeks, more people were volunteering to join her team than any other internal initiative in company history. But not everyone was happy. Ethan's board of directors didn't trust her. "She's unqualified. She has no experience. She's going to embarrass us." They whispered it in meetings. Some said it to her face. And behind closed doors, they began pressuring Ethan to let her go. He didn't. Instead, he promoted her to lead the entire pilot program. That didn't sit well with people like Cameron Hayes, a senior VP whose entire world was built on status and gatekeeping. To him, Emily was a charity case, an eyesore, a PR stunt. So he started digging. And what he found wasn't scandalous. It was worse for him. He found resilience. A woman who worked through holidays, nursed her dying mother alone, paid off every debt herself, and never once asked anyone for help. He found glowing recommendations from local soup kitchens and shelters. Found that Emily had volunteered on her few days off, serving meals to others, even when she couldn't afford her own. But Cameron wasn't done. He began planting doubts, whispering to other execs, trying to discredit the Bridge Project as a distraction from core operations. One day, during a tense board meeting, he spoke up. "With all due respect, Mr. Jameson, this initiative, while heartfelt, is pulling resources from our innovation labs. And Miss Carson, though noble, lacks the background to be leading a company initiative of this scale." Ethan didn't even blink. He turned to Emily. "Would you like to respond?" Emily looked around the room, full of suits and skepticism. She stood slowly. Her voice was calm, but firm. "You're right. I don't have the background you all do. I didn't go to Yale. I didn't intern at some bank. I've waited tables, cleaned floors, and walked home in shoes with holes in them. I've seen what this city does to the forgotten, and I know what it feels like to be invisible." She took a breath. "But I also know that kindness matters. That when you give someone dignity, they start to believe they're worthy. That's not a distraction. That's a foundation. And if this company doesn't value that, then maybe it's not as innovative as it claims." The room went silent, and then Ethan clapped. Not slowly, not sarcastically, proudly, spoken like a leader. Emily didn't sleep much that night. After her speech at the board meeting, things had shifted. Fast. Some employees started treating her with respect, nodding in the hallways, asking questions, offering to help the Bridge Project. Others, they kept their fake smiles and sharpened knives. Especially Cameron Hayes. He didn't clap. He didn't speak. He just stared across the table with the kind of smirk that made your skin crawl, like a man who'd already decided how this story ended. Emily wasn't naive. She knew corporate kindness came with a clock, and hers was ticking. The next morning, Emily arrived early, her usual routine. A habit she'd built from years in diners and laundromats, where being early meant survival. She didn't notice anything unusual until her badge didn't scan. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. The security guard stepped over, apologetic. Sorry, Miss Carson. IT said your clearance has been temporarily suspended. Emily's stomach dropped. What? What? They didn't say. Just that you need to report to HR immediately. The ride to the 12th floor felt like an execution. At the door, HR looked uncomfortable. Emily, can you step inside? She entered slowly. Cameron Hayes was already there. And so was Ethan. That was her first relief. But then she saw the document on the table. A thick printed packet with her name on the front. And the words, Internal Investigation. What is this? She asked, her voice low. Cameron spoke first. Concerns were raised about misuse of company resources and unauthorized outreach methods. We're obligated to investigate. Emily turned to Ethan. This is a setup. I know, he said calmly. Cameron stiffened. Excuse me. Ethan stood. I know what this is, Cameron. You've been undermining her since day one. And frankly, I let it go too long. Emily blinked. Cameron went red. I'm protecting the shareholders. She's a liability. No, Ethan cut in. You are. He pulled out a tablet, tapped it twice, and turned it around. It displayed Cameron's email logs. Specifically, emails to outside vendors rerouting bridge project funds through unauthorized accounts. Emily gasped. Cameron's face turned ghost white. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. I gave you every chance to lead with integrity. You chose sabotage. You're done here. Cameron stood up too quickly. You'll regret this. I built this company. No, my father built it, and I almost destroyed it trying to be like him. But I won't make that mistake again. 2 security officers appeared behind Cameron. Escort him out. Cameron didn't say another word. He just walked out, defeated. Once the door closed, Ethan turned to Emily. I'm sorry. I should have seen it sooner. She shook her head. You believed me when it mattered. He smiled, sitting back down. The board isn't going to like this, but they'll get over it. Emily looked down at the printed packet. So, I'm not under investigation. Ethan laughed. No, I printed that to throw Cameron off. HR didn't even authorize it. Her breath caught. You knew he'd come for me. I knew he'd try. But I also knew you could handle it. You don't need protecting. You need space to lead. Something shifted in her then. Something solidified. For the first time, she believed it. She belonged here. By month's end, the bridge project had doubled in staff. Emily led partnerships with 3 inner-city schools, launched mentorship programs with company engineers, and got Jameson Dynamics into the national spotlight for its community work. She didn't wear suits. She didn't change her voice. She didn't try to be anyone else. She was just Emily. And that was enough. One evening, as she walked out of the office, Ellie was waiting by the elevator with a drawing. A child's scrawl of 3 stick figures. Emily, Ethan, and her, holding muffins. It's our muffin day. Ellie beamed. Emily knelt down, tears pricking her eyes. I love it. She made you CEO? Ethan said behind them, grinning. Emily stood, rolling her eyes. Not funny. Not yet, he said. But don't be surprised if the board tries it. She laughed, brushing hair from her face. Right. From waitress to CEO. He looked at her, voice softer now. Stranger things have happened. Their eyes locked. Not romantic. Not yet. Something deeper. Respect. Trust. A bond forged in storms and small kindnesses. I'm proud of you, Emily. She looked at him for a long moment. I'm finally proud of me, too. 6 months later, the bridge project was no longer just a pilot. It had become the model. Dozens of companies reached out, asking how Jameson Dynamics pulled it off. How they turned a struggling side initiative into a national phenomenon that had already placed over 1,200 low-income students into paid internships, many of whom were now being mentored by top engineers in the country. But for Emily, it was never about numbers. It was about faces, names, moments. Like the high school girl from East Harlem who once sold candy on subways to afford her textbooks, now presenting a robotics demo to NASA. Or the 18-year-old who used to live in his car, now proudly designing sustainable tech in Ethan's R&D department. Every single one reminded Emily of that cold morning. That last muffin. That tiny, unnoticed act of kindness. One day, she stood at the cafe counter of Miller's Corner, the same place where it all began. She hadn't been back in months. The fluorescent lights still flickered. The old manager had been replaced. But the warmth of the place hadn't changed. The young barista behind the counter looked up and blinked in shock. Wait, are you Emily Carson? Emily smiled, setting down a tip large enough to cover the girl's shift. Used to be. You're on the posters, she gushed. You're the one who started the bridge thing. My brother's in that program. You're a hero to him. Emily's smile faltered, just slightly. Tell him. He's the hero. I just opened the door. She bought 2 muffins and stepped outside. Ethan and Ellie were waiting near the park across the street. Ellie's backpack bounced as she ran over to hug her. I got an A in math, she squealed. Emily laughed. You're going to outsmart all of us someday. I already did, she said proudly. I told Daddy you should be his boss. Ethan raised an eyebrow. She's not wrong. Emily passed him a muffin. For old time's sake. He took it, unwrapping it slowly, the scent triggering something deeper than just hunger. You know, he said after a long pause, I've seen empires fall over boardroom betrayals, media scandals, mergers gone wrong. But the one thing that keeps companies alive? She looked at him. Grace, he finished. And you've got more of it than anyone I've ever met. Emily looked down, kicking a pebble. Funny. For a long time, I thought kindness made me weak. Like it put a target on my back. He touched her shoulder lightly. It made you unbreakable. They stood there for a long while, eating muffins in the cool breeze. Nothing fancy. No boardroom. No press. Just 2 people. And a child. Sharing the moment. Later that evening, Emily gave a speech at an awards gala where she was being honored for Corporate Impact Leader of the Year. The ballroom was packed. Camera flashes. Journalists. Billionaires. But she stood on stage like she was still in that old apron. Calm. Steady. Real. And she said, people think success is about being the loudest in the room, the sharpest suit, the biggest paycheck. But sometimes, it starts with being the one who shares their last muffin. I didn't grow up dreaming of boardrooms or budgets. I just wanted to survive, to be seen, to matter. And that morning, when I gave that muffin away, I had no idea I was feeding the CEO of the company next door. I didn't know it would change my life. But the truth is, it's not about who he was. It's about who we choose to be when no one's watching. So if you're wondering whether small kindness matters, this is your answer. It always does. The crowd stood, applauding, some with tears in their eyes. After the ceremony, Ethan met her backstage. Ellie clung to her side like always. So, he said, slipping his hands in his pockets, what's next? Emily smiled. Bigger bridges.